Near future, AI robots called Omnic, made by the Omnica Corporation's innovative robotics technology, became widely distributed around the world. And Omnica proceeded to build enormous factories named Omnium on each continent. However, the company failed to meet the promised growth rate and production capacity and is closed down on account of fraud, eventually leading to suspension of Omnium as well. However, one day Omnium rebooted itself and began to produce military robot corps that attack humans during an event called the Omni Crisis. And the United Nations organized a special force called Overwatch to deal with the worldwide revolt by robots. To fight against Omnics, Overwatch selected world-class professionals in all fields, such as soldiers, scientists, robots, and adventurers, and eventually won the battle against Omnics, putting an end to Omni Crisis. After the Omni Crisis, Overwatch rose to fame and became globally influential heroes. However, this time, villains began to appear in different places. While Overwatch was caught with shocking allegations, such as failing to accomplish major missions, corruption, poor management, and human rights violation. This led a special UN committee to investigate Overwatch. However, during the investigation, Overwatch's Swiss headquarters was destroyed in an apparent accident, killing its high-ranking officials. In the end, Overwatch was disbanded and the world is again left unprotected against terrorism and crimes. Not surprisingly, a terrorist organization named Talon becomes active. Conflicts arose in different parts of the world, and in Russia, the second Omni Crisis took place. This is when Overwatch animated short Recall takes place, and Caesar, just kidding. Winston, who was a member of Overwatch, initiates an agent recall, as shown in the first Overwatch cinematic trailer to foil Talon's plan. Overwatch was a multinational military organization whose founding members includes Anna Emery, mother of Farah, Gabriel Reyes, Torbjorn Lindholm, Jack Morrison, Reinhard Willem, and Liao. Tracer, who later joined Overwatch and is a mascot of the game, is a pilot who was chosen to test the Slipstream, which is a teleporting fighter designed by Overwatch. However, during its first flight, the aircraft's teleportation matrix malfunctioned and it disappeared. Tracer was believed to be dead. Several months later, however, she reappeared, but the molecular structure of her body was desynchronized from time, making her a living ghost. Later, a scientist from Overwatch develops a chronal accelerator that allows her to stay in the present and, as a result, be able to control her own time, and she became an Overwatch agent. The scientist who developed the chronal accelerator is Caesar, no, Winston, who is actually a gorilla that obtained intellectual development by genetic engineering. Living in the Horizon Lunar Colony, Winston was raised by Dr. Harold Winston, who used to teach him science, language, etc. However, one day, other gorillas in the Horizon Lunar Colony led an uprising and took over the colony, and Winston, who took the name from the doctor, escaped to the Earth and joined Overwatch as a scientist instead of following other gorillas. Mercy, who used to be a doctor, joined Overwatch to save more lives. In fact, she saved Ganji, who was dying in a battle with his brother and later joined Overwatch. So there are many scientists and doctors as well as soldiers in Overwatch, one of whom is Mei, a climatologist from China. In addition to watch points allocated to a past new uprising of Omnics, Echo Points were set up to find out the cause of climate change, and she was assigned to Echo Point Antarctica. However, one day a sudden storm destroys the Echo Point and isolates the scientists working there, including Mei. As a last resort, they even hibernate until the rescue arrives. However, it took years for the rescue team to find the scientists, and only Mei managed to maintain hibernation and survive. When Overwatch was first gathered, the command was given to the veteran Reyes, who underwent the Soldier Enhancement Program. However, it was Jack Morrison who also completed the enhancement program that showed leadership in bringing the Omni Crisis under control, and UN appointed Morrison Overwatch's first and last official commander. By contrast, Reyes, who initially led the group, became the commander of Blackwatch, which is Overwatch's Black Ops division, and took charge of unofficial tasks. Jesse McCree, who used to be a trafficker, joined Blackwatch under Reyes' command when he was given a choice between going to jail and working for Blackwatch. However, as Overwatch's influence decreases, some members of Blackwatch began to show dissatisfaction, and after Morrison is promoted to commander, the relationship between Morrison and Reyes become worse, eventually dividing Overwatch into those who follow Morrison and those who support Reyes. The conflict leads to a fight, and the explosion at the Swiss headquarters results in disbanding Overwatch. Although both Morrison and Reyes believed to have been killed in the accident, Morrison was turned into...
And his name is John C.
Soldier 76, and began to take revenge on those who brought down Overwatch. While Reyes becomes Deadpool, Reaper, with his body having the ability to rapidly rot and regenerate, and revenge former Overwatch agents. Having turned into Reaper, Reyes is working as part of Talon, and sometimes with Widowmaker, who is also part of the organization. Widowmaker's real name is Amelie Lacroix, and she used to be an ordinary woman. Her husband, Jared Lacroix, was a commander in Overwatch fighting against the terrorist organization Talon. After many failed attempts to kill Jared, Talon aims at Amelie as a new target. Abducted by Talon, Amelie is subjected to neural reprogramming and brainwashing, before she finally kills her husband and joins Talon. During the training at Talon, her physiology changes, which slows down her heartbeat and turns her skin to blue. Sombra, one of the most notorious hackers in the world, uses information to control people in power. Although she is an agent of Talon, Sombra is not committed to the organization at all. For instance, during the Katia Volskaya assassination operation, she disconnects communication with Reaper, who also works for Talon, and instead talks to Katia, from whom she obtains personal benefit, and lets go of her, ruining the operation as a result. It appears that to Sombra, Talon is only a means for her to reach her true goal. Naturally, her relationship with other Talon agents like Reaper and Widowmaker does not seem particularly strong. When killing Widowmaker, Sombra mocks her for being an idiot. And Widowmaker also makes fun of her for not being so clever when killing Sombra. Reaper reveals his discomfort with Sombra, who is flippant about missions, while Sombra laughs at Reaper for being so tense. Doomfist, a new hero introduced recently, is from Nigeria and a member of the Council, which is made up of leaders of Talon. He was taken out of jail by Talon and therefore is in the offensive army of Talon in the game. He believes humans become stronger through battle and aims to strengthen humanity by causing more wars and chaos. Naturally, as a high-ranking official of Talon, he does not have amicable relationship with Overwatch heroes, especially his relationship with Genji, Tracer, and Winston, whom he fought in the trailer and who eventually sent him to jail, must be the worst. In particular, Winston is likely to be rivals with Doomfist, as he knocks him down with Primal Rage. In any case, although we cannot know for sure the exact goal of Talon, to which main characters such as Reaper and Widowmaker belong, in Train Hopper, a digital comic short about McCree before he disappeared to avoid internal dispute before Overwatch disbanded, it shows a scene where Blackwatch works for Talon. Considering this and other clues shown in the trailers, Talon is very likely to become a key player in the Overwatch storyline. Back to the point, other independent heroes like McCree include Lucio and Hanzo. First, Lucio comes from the favela in Rio, Brazil, and when a multinational corporation called the Vishkar Corporation oppressed and exploited residents for redevelopment of the city, he stole the company's sonic technology, which he modified and used later for leading the citizens to protest Vishkar. Eventually, Lucio succeeds in driving the Vishkar Corporation out of his hometown. However, the Vishkar Corporation is still strong thanks to Symmetra. Vishkar is a company that builds urban facilities by using light-bending technology. They aim to create a better world through order, and Symmetra also works toward the same goal. However, what happens behind the scene do not seem to support their ideal. Back to the main story. Again, another independent hero, Hanzo, was originally a member of a criminal empire engaging in illegal weapons and drugs trade. Hanzo and Genji were brothers of the Shimada family, and after his father, the leader of the empire, passed away, the eldest son Hanzo took his place. However, Genji, the second son, was not interested in the illegal business of the family and got into a huge fight with Hanzo. After a fierce fight, Genji is almost killed, and Hanzo, believing his brother is dead, leaves the family business behind and walks away on his own with enormous guilt. Genji is saved but became a cyborg, and he grows more and more repelled by his new body. he left Overwatch to find the meaning of his life when he met his new mentor, Zenyatta, who is an Omnic Shambali monk. Zenyatta is a robot that used to belong to a monastery led by Omnics, where after the Omnic crisis, the Omnic monks led a movement to create a harmony in the world among different species, believing that they also had the essence of soul like humans do. However, Zenyatta was skeptical that the doctrine would help resolve conflict, and decided to leave the place and help people solve their problems and find peace. As a mentee of Zenyatta, Genji began to accept his identity and found peace of mind. Like Zenyatta, the automated combat robot, Bastion, also takes up a new path after the Omnic crisis. Although Bastion robot units were created for peacekeeping purposes, but during the Omnic crisis, they were turned against their human makers. However, one of the models is led to a different destiny. One unique Bastion unit, severely damaged in the final battles of the war, was left forgotten for over a decade before it suddenly switched on again, and found itself with fascination with the nature, and its combat program was lost. Although some Omnics obtained mild nature like Bastion, the threat of another Omnic crisis was still present. Former Egyptian soldier, whose dream was to join Overwatch before it was dissolved, Pharah was hired by Hallex Security to protect the god program Anubis, which was quarantined by Overwatch. However, due to security upgrade failure, Anubis was reactivated and took over Omnix's system, which prompted Omnix to begin their attack. Fortunately, however, Pharah and her team members successfully regained control over Anubis, bringing peace back to Egypt. However, things did not turn out as well in Russia. Alexandra Zarinova was born and raised in a small town that was destroyed by the Omnic crisis. She grew up watching the catastrophe of war and swore to protect her people by gaining strength. Having become a powerlifter and bodybuilder, she wanted to break the world record in a world championship. But the day before the competition, the Omnium in Siberia awakened, causing the second Omnic crisis. With her hometown facing the threat of war again, she immediately withdraws from the competition and joins the Russian Defense Force. There's also a hero in South Korea who belongs to the national military like Zarya. Like in other countries, South Korea fell prey to a colossal Omnic monstrosity that sprang out of the south coast, before the country manages to return the Omnic back into the sea and sets up a mechanized armored drone unit named Mecha. However, over several more attacks, Omnics evolved and began to manipulate the drone network of Mecha, and the South Korean army had no choice but to place pilots in the robots. The government decided pro-gamers who have exceptional reflex and intuition are perfect for the role, such as Diva, also known as Hannah Song, who is a world champion of StarCraft 6. Diva, who belongs to Mecha, is ready to be dispatched at any time to protect her country. Meanwhile, the situation in Australia was quite the opposite. Having decided the country suffered from too much damage caused by the Omnic crisis, the Australian government attempted to sign a peace agreement with Omnics by giving them the Omnium Australia and the surrounding land located in the country. However, residents who lost their home in the process revolted in an attempt to regain their land from robots and Omnics. The riot intensified, and in the end, they even blow up the fusion reactor of the Omnium. As a result of the explosion, the land within thousands of kilometers from the reactor became contaminated by radiation, destroying the Omnium and land. And Mecha Rutledge, who was one of the witnesses of the disaster, loses his humanity gradually and turns into a ruthless killer named Roadhog. One of the survivors who called themselves Junkers was Junkrat, who went mad after the radiation exposure. He found out about a secret in the ruins of the Omnium. Although the secret has not been exposed yet, it made Junkrat a target of bounty hunters and gangs, eventually leading him to hire Roadhog as his bodyguard to accompany him. From a soldier to criminal, doctor, ninja, dwarf, DJ, and even anthropoid, the 24 heroes are of unique and diverse characters, and their story of Overwatch has only just begun.